Welcome to the show. You are with Relax Radio Beyond Frequencies. My name is Evan Ace, and we are on another episode, the second episode of the Mic Drop, a revolution of a generation. And I'm super duper excited for today's conversation because we have an incredible person, someone who's taking the nation by storm, obviously in a good way, the one and only, the incredible Roel Raymond. Roel Raymond, welcome to the show. So happy that you are being a part of Relax Radio Beyond Frequencies.
Very, very kind. Much more than I expected. Thank you so much.
Well, there's so much more to say about you, Roel. First of all, got to tell you, thank you so much for what you're doing for the nation, because, seeing everything, your posts and everything, even personally, your posts are what I share on my social media platforms as well. And I think most of us could relate to that. And I think before we dive right into the conversation, I got to tell everyone watching at the moment, you can follow us on our social media platforms. We are there on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and also do hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page so you don't miss out on incredible and special programs just like this one. And also do download the Relax Radio app that is available completely for free for both iOS and Android devices. Head on over to Apple App Stores, your Google Play Stores. You know what you got to do. Hit that download button, have us running in the background so we can keep you in great company. Now, Roel, but what better way to get to know you than ask you, so tell us who you are and what made you want to pursue journalism.
Okay, so I'm going to leave the who I am question because I think that's a bit of an existential question.
All right.
Might
Understandable.
take a while to get back to it.
Understandable.
In terms of journalism, I actually never chose to be a journalist. I stumbled on it, left it several times because I don't know how it is now. I think things have changed, but journalism doesn't pay very much, especially in Sri Lanka.
Wow.
So, yeah.
You're just putting it out there, huh?
Putting it out
Yeah.
there. So I did leave plenty of times actually, but I always ended up back in journalism because I feel that some of the principles of journalism and some of the principles that I was raised on are in alignment. So there's the truth telling and truth speaking.
Yep.
That really, it's something that really, really appeals to me. So I do, I think for that reason, I do end up back in journalism all the time.
All the time. It just keeps coming back to you. Well, Roel, thank you so much for that introduction. So with that said, of course, I wanted to, dive right into the questions, but then I want to ask you something really special, something that I've been thinking about. So, being a journalist for such a long time, were you always aware about the fact that, the political system of Sri Lanka was corrupt? It was standing on a corrupt standpoint. But, did you only start voicing about it recently? And if you did, what made you actually, start being more involved and active in the current times? Were you doing this back then as well, but were people not batting an eye at the time?
It's a bit of an up and down tale. So when I started journalism, it was about 2007, I think. I actually started in radio.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I started as a news presenter.
Right.
So my knowledge was very minimal of news and whatever. So it was just reading out the news every 45 minutes. I think the remainder of the 45 minutes I used to nap outside. So it wasn't really like, but it was a starting point. And then I moved on to another radio station where I eventually ended up as head of news. And I think that's where I learned a little more about it. But at radio stations, I'm not speaking for the situation now, but back in the day, it was just you take the news off other websites. There's no actual journalism.
Yes.
So I did move for a much lower pay to a print, to a newspaper. And I think that's where I had my very first learnings because I was in the web department and this was still very new in Sri Lanka around 2009.
Right.
And at that point, so there was Facebook, and I don't think Twitter was around, to be honest, or it wasn't being used here in Sri Lanka, but there was Facebook. And I was a part of the blogosphere, which was still in its very, very inceptual stages in Sri Lanka. And I remember the print newspaper that I worked for hadn't even learned how to use these tools for themselves. We were just a bunch, we were the young kids there who were
Yes.
using these tools. And we were sort of looked at like, we think you've got something, but we're not sure what you're talking about. Like, just do
Mm-mm-mm.
your job,
Yeah.
basically. And back in the day, I think there was also a lot of like, you can't say certain things on your social media platforms that, your employees may not like it, then you might, lose your job. So there were all of these things going on. But part of this digital age, I think at that point, is like people commented on the news stories, and I learned a lot from those comments.
Okay.
So the website would post their news, and then I'd hear these or read these arguments, because part of my job was moderating the comments.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is also where it really started for me, the learning curve. And from there, I moved to, I think I worked at all the English newspapers in Sri Lanka at some
Right.
point or the other. So
Mm-hmm.
my learning has been, so I started in radio, then web, then I did news stories, then I moved to the features desk. So I've done like a up and down, and my learning has been through this process. But I have to say that like the learning doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Even at this age, there's like a lot more about history that I need to know, a lot more the more inside stories that you hear between, things that happen between ministers, or little conversations, all of these stories, I think right through till I hit my 70s and 80s, hopefully I'll still be learning these
Yeah.
stories, because it adds a lot of perspective. But in terms of being vocal, I think yes, as young people are generally vocal.
Young people are generally vocal. That's what
Yeah.
you say. On that note, I want to ask you. So, deep diving into what you said, were you, having that fear factor of, would I get either, I don't know, you right? When you think about the whole Rajapaksa political system, whenever journalists came out and voiced their opinions, I don't think you are stranger to knowing what happened to
Yeah,
them, right? I
yeah,
mean, it's all over
yeah.
the news, and those stories are coming back up again. That fear, was that instilled in you back then as well?
It was. So I would say that as a very young journalist, I was sometimes young people are a bit foolhardy, and I'm saying this from an older person's perspective, slightly older person's
Come
perspective,
on, Royal, you're not
but
old.
slightly older. So the upper echelons of youth. Okay.
Yeah.
So some people, they very much younger. I'm talking about early 20s. Youth can be a bit foolhardy, but that is specifically the foolhardiness that you need to drive change. Like
Yes.
the reason why this Aragale is happening in Sri Lanka, the reason why there's all of this going on is because young people are at that age where they don't really want to hear what you have to say. They don't want to hear what the older people have to say, which is what you need.
Mm-mm.
By the time you get older and older, you get used to the system, and you learn to like just move with
It
the
becomes a
system.
new norm, huh?
Correct,
Yeah.
exactly. So young people are so important in that. And I think when I was younger, of course, I was quite loud. But sometime in 2013, this is just before, so the Rajapaksas were in from 2005 to 2015. And I don't think during the 2015 election, they never expected to lose. So they were, I would say in 2013, they were at a very powerful stage, or sort of increasing in power more and
Yeah.
more. And even
Mm-hmm.
Mahinda Rajapaksa went in for an early election. He expected
Yeah.
to win it. So they were consolidating their power. And I think at some point, at that point, I can't remember how old I was, but I kind of felt like maybe I need to stop being so loud. So I did delete my Facebook account, and I did delete my
Wow.
my original Facebook account, and my original Twitter account are not there.
Oh, wow.
But what you do have now is a 2013 onward account, because I was very aware of digital footprint. I was worried about the digital footprint that I was leaving. I was things like the panopticon state, where the state is the big brother, and what these were the
Yeah.
conversations at that
Mm-hmm.
time. So I was being cautious. Let's put it that way.
Being cautious,
Yeah.
that's the easy way to put it,
Yeah.
huh? By the way, for anyone watching in and hopping on board, you are watching the Mic Drop, a revolution of a generation on Relax Radio Beyond Frequencies. My name is Evanese, and of course, she is no stranger to anyone anymore. This is the fantastic Royal Raymond, news personality, editor-in-chief at Raw Media, doing her utmost best, fighting the good fight, fighting the peaceful fight against the current economic crisis, trying to bring justice to this nation of Sri Lanka now. Roel, something else I wanted to touch on was, why are youth, right, not considered as stakeholders in political discussions, even when, majority of the winning depends on their votes? Because when you actually think about it, right, the older generations, the truth is, I mean, as difficult as it is to, digest, they die, right? And then it's the youth that comes up. So most of the votes, they come from the youth. But why are youth not, a part of it in the political discussions? Mainly, even if they, do try to talk, hello, we're talking about the current times, they are being shut down, even if you think about the attack on the 9th of May, right? So why is that happening within this country?
There are two, the way I see it, there are like I mean I can bring it down to two reasons, and I think in the case of youth alone, it's because it's easy to dismiss what they're saying. It's easy to for the older people, right? Like for the
Mm-hmm.
people in power in their
Yeah.
60s and
Mm-mm.
70s, it's easy to dismiss young people on the basis of the factor that you don't know enough. It may be that the
Mm-mm.
youth is saying something very important, because what the youth, I find sometimes they may not have the historical or cultural context of like history that has happened over the years, but they know right from wrong. And
Absolutely.
that's what they're pushing for. But it's very easy for the older politicians to splinter that argument, to fragmentize it, to say, oh, but you don't know what happened during the JVP uprising. But you're even there. That was
That's a
also the
big
youth.
one, huh?
Yeah,
That's
they
a big
use
one.
that all the time.
Yeah.
Like, you guys weren't born. There were people like you before. They also did this. And you know what happened to them. Like, y'all are on a fool's mission is the kind. It's very easy to dismiss
Yeah,
this. So
yeah,
that's
that's
one
true.
thing. And I think the larger thing is, though, of course, if you look at it, it's not just the youth, but you'll find youth, women, and basically anyone. Is You'll notice this happening right now in Sri Lanka, where the
Mm-hmm.
cabinet, the newly appointed cabinet, and Ranil Wickremesinghe and that whole bunch, they consolidate power and they don't listen to anyone else. So it doesn't matter what the public is saying, but the public continues to say it because the public is still saying they want Gota to go home.
Yeah.
But they come to a point where everybody else's opinions just not even don't matter. They just don't hear it. It just doesn't
It's
exist.
like, did somebody say something like,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
just
right?
completely not there. So
Mm-mm.
right now they are a little aware. I mean, not that they're not aware, they are aware, but they're still, I see right now that they're still trying to go down that road of leaving people behind and not listening to people's opinions at all, which is not the way to go because people are still very clear about their demands. They want Gota to go home and they want a system change. And I'm totally for both of those things.
Yes. But yeah, on that note, also, do you think, even in the older generations, now you said, obviously back then they bring out the whole, JVP riots and,
Mm,
the UNP, that was,
mm,
a big chaos
yeah,
back at the time. But, even the youth at the time, they did voice out their
yeah.
opinions and they started protesting. But what is the difference that you're seeing with the current protests and the protesters back then?
Two things. We have history on our side in that people, even if young people may not know all of the details, we have learned something from history.
Mm-mm.
So we do know that a violent uprising won't help,
Yeah.
right? Whereas assume we were born in the 1960s or earlier 1950s or whatever, and we were in our youth by the time the 1960s, 70s rolled on, we wouldn't have had the history to learn from, and we may have chosen violence
All
given
right.
that time, right?
Mm-mm.
So we have history on our side in that we've learned those lessons from our ancestors, from the past, from the young people who have done these things. So we know violence is not a place we can go to. We know, like in history, other people have chosen violence before, not just the JVP and whatever. That's one thing. But besides that, I think obviously the very huge change is like the fact that there is the internet and there are digital tools that keep people connected, educated, inspired. I'm a big fan of obviously digital and
Mm-mm.
everything
Yeah.
digital can do, and that I think is the primary factor that is getting in the way of any kind of autocratic authoritarian government.
Yes. You say, there's not much violence at the moment, but I want to, counter that and say, but still, people standing in field queues and
Yes.
protesters, this is something that I experienced myself, by the way. I was on my way to work, but there were people standing out with, I don't know, poles and sticks,
Mm.
and they didn't let the vehicle go. Isn't that, I don't know, the government using either that, the civilians as hatchetmen against the civilians themselves? Or do you think, yes, there is still violence within the protesters themselves? Because, children, they need to go to school. They need to, get the education done. There are children sitting for O-level examinations that are not being led through to go to their classes. People are not able to go to work. Do you see a problem? And why do you think that is happening? And what would you think or encourage the people to, do?
A very good and very tough question, but thankfully I have an answer. So the way I see it is the Gota Go Home movement that is sort of that has found its place in Gota Go Gama is is a how do I put it? They are defined by certain characteristics, and one of those is nonviolence. So they're not interested in violence. It has been a peaceful protest. It's been like lots of people have come there. I think the goal was to bring in 1 million people. I think they approximated that over 2 million passed through during those days. It was huge. It was, I have never seen anything like that in my life. It was like the Woodstock of protest. There was music,
Yeah.
there was art, there
It's
was
like a festival there,
exactly
huh?
right. It was
Yeah.
beautiful, and
Mm-mm.
it was every subculture I saw being represented there. But that is one scene, and then I'm not saying that sentiment doesn't exist everywhere around the country. It's just that at Gotago Gama was the place in which that sentiment came together. There were and are people who hold Gotago Gama together, but there are people who have that sentiment but obviously can't come because maybe
Yeah.
they live outside of Colombo or because they have to work or whatever, right? So as Gotago Gama, then that whole movement spread from one week. I remember being there right from the start. So I remember
Mm-mm.
when we came around to the sixth night, some of the guys there were saying, now let's see. They say, no, in Sri Lanka, we will forget within a week.
Mm-mm.
Tomorrow, we will prove that this is wrong. So
Right.
it was a step by step incremental fight. People can turn around and be like, oh, what has 2 months ago? Now, what's the use in protesting? Might as well go home. But every step of the way, these kids pushed it forward, and there were changes. We had changes. We saw incremental changes. We saw things happening. So I
Yeah.
remember that point of like that crossing that 1 week mark and thinking, wow, like these everybody was like, wow, we did this. We crossed the 1 week. Then it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, they hit a month. So it was really beautiful. But there's also a reality in that you can't have the entire country come and like be at Goda Gogama, right?
Yeah.
So they have to go
It's
back.
not
A lot
practical.
of
Yeah.
people went back to work. They would come back in the night. So they were trying to keep this going. And of course, there are people who didn't come, but like I said, had the sentiment. They are the ones who I feel reacted in anger that day during on this violence
Mm-mm.
you're talking about,
Yeah.
because even I was involved in it, and it was not the Gota Gogama people,
Yeah.
the people who had been there right from the start. It was people who were anti-government, definitely, but they chose the path of violence, and it was very, it was a learning point for me also, because I do believe very strongly that obviously violence is not the answer.
Are we sure though? Were all of them anti-government people?
Yes, I mean, in the sense, it's like this. I have my opinion, but I'm leaving it open to anything else, right? I could be proved wrong. I'm not saying that my
Mm-mm.
opinion, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that what I imagine or think based on my subjective view of what happened is right. It could
Yes.
be something else. But what I saw there and what I heard there was, I did ask who were these people. They said Gami ministers, the people in that area, had taken to the streets, and they were hell bent on getting into temple trees the night that I got, the evening that I got caught to it, and they were really angry with the army and whatever. And I understand. I understand where they're coming from. They're like you said, they're the ones without food, petrol, etc. But at the danger with violence or danger with using violence is it can very quickly spin out of control, and that's what
Absolutely.
happened.
Yes.
So at that point, even though I was a journalist, I became branded very easily as an enemy, simply for the fact that my camera would have borne witness to the fact that they were unleashing violence.
Violence.
So it's a interesting point, because media is useful to people as long as you're covering what's convenient to them. But media's role is to cover if there was a murder going on there. Because actually, I went there because I heard that there was like this beating, people were being beaten up and stripped naked and whatever. So later, people told me, "Why did you go? Like you should have known better than to go there." I'm like, "But my job
That's
is to be
that's
a
your job.
journalist. I don't get to
Mm-mm.
say, oh, something grotesque is going on, so I'm going to turn my camera away." Your job is to do that, because it doesn't matter if the perpetrator is anti-Gota or for Gota. Violence is simply not allowed, right?
Allowed.
That is
Yeah.
basically the law. That is what we've been trying to do. So it's a point of principle, but you also know that when you stick to principles, you can get in trouble. So
That's true. But
having principles get you into
into
trouble
trouble, that's
sometimes.
true.
Yeah.
But at Gota Gogama, were you there as a protester or as a journalist? Where was your heart in, most?
My heart was with the people.
Mm-mm.
I was there as a journalist. There were a few occasions I wore the black band because I
Right.
got very caught up in the whole movement. And you see, my phone also has the Aragolia
Ooh,
sticker
that's
on
cool.
it. Yeah. So I'm with the people, definitely. But
Yeah.
my job was to inform people who were not there of what was happening out there.
Right. So, and when you share, social media content, right? Like I said, even myself, I follow you, and when I see something from you, I share it on my, stories and whatnot. But do you think when you're sharing, information as a journalist, do you think you are being unbiased or biased? What,
Oh,
like,
I'm very biased, and I've been very clear about it,
yes,
because there's an argument which, honestly, up until I haven't had the opportunity, and I'm very grateful for this, to clarify and crystallize my own thoughts on this. Because a lot of the time, I come under attack for having an opinion, and I'm just like, on an instinct level, I'm like, don't tell me like whether to have an opinion or not. But I haven't had the time to flesh out my argument. but I do have an argument, obviously. So this will help. But my
Yes.
point is, if you are going to be unbiased, then what good are you doing to society?
Mm-mm.
Because there is that saying, and for a reason, there is saying that that people like that evil occurs in people's silences. The more you can say, "Oh, I'm unbiased media," and then if I don't call out what is wrong, then that evil will occur. So, do people want me to be okay? Let's talk climate change. Let's talk. What's that church of spaghetti monsters or something? There's some there's
All
some
right.
crazy church of spaghetti something or the other. I can't remember some. Oh, okay, flat earthers. Let's talk about
Oh,
flat
all
earthers.
right.
Okay, you want me to
Yes.
be neutral? I can be neutral. I can say flat earthers say this and that and whatever. So then flat earthers put a lot of money. They have a lot of press conferences. I go for the press conferences. I'm reporting on flat earthers, and they monopolize the media because the media doesn't have an opinion and the media has to be unbiased. So I very strongly disagree with it. I think media has the duty to contextualize and educate and have opinions and be biased towards the truth, right? That is
Yeah.
your job, to be biased towards the truth. So I just haven't had the time to get back to a lot of people who are like, oh, we think who do you think you are? You're a journalist, you don't
You
have an
probably get
opinion.
spammed with
I get
messages.
attacked quite a bit now. I like I said, I wish I had the time to sit down and have a little media education class, right? Like, let me tell you,
Yes.
because like way back in the 60s, Bob Woodward, who was one of the who exposed Nixon, right? He was the journalist who exposed Nixon. He said, journalists are not stenographers. Our job is not to sit down and take notes and just pass on the notes. That's bad journalism. That's basically
Mm-mm.
what Sri Lankan journalism is. You just take down notes and you publish it. Where is
Yeah.
the contextualizing? People may not know enough, but that's where they look at us. And I get that that's a big responsibility, because people who may not know enough will just look at me for maybe knowing if something is right or wrong. And I feel that responsibility very strongly. But I will also very clearly stick to my guns when it comes to telling the truth. So
Bottom line is, media organizations, they should be able to report and have an opinion as well.
very 100%, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome, and I
Yeah.
think that's a clear message that is being put out by the one and only Royal Raymond. For anyone hopping on board at the moment, welcome to the show. You are with Relax Radio Beyond Frequencies. My name is Evanese, and this is, of course, Royal Raymond. Royal, say hi to everybody. I think everyone's loving the conversation, because I am definitely learning a lot as well, to get that opinion from you, which, by the way, is biased coming from because it's not even I don't want to call it biased as
Yeah.
well, because it's the truth.
It is the truth.
It's the truth, right? And on that note, of course, a Royal, politics, would you ever get into it? Because there have been talks about forming of a youth political party. I haven't seen it in the recent weeks, but a couple of months ago it
Mm.
was literally trending, and I was like, one of the few people that I thought would actually get into it was you. So what are your thoughts on it? Have you always been interested in politics? Would you ever get into it? If yes, why? And if no, why?
Again, loaded question. I have always flirted with the idea of politics, getting into politics. And that is because I have always wanted to make a change. And I have felt that I have felt in the past tense, that the highest point from which to make a change is or was politics. That's what I felt when I was a very young person. But as I got closer to politics, and I'm very close now, so very close to the circles of power, I see that I'm not going to make any change in this system, because the system is so corrupt that you can't make a change. So I would rather stay in a place where I can have a bigger voice, where I can say the things I want to say. And I think media is that place for me. But that doesn't rule out necessarily, but I will say I'm leaning towards media more than politics. It doesn't rule out getting involved if I need. I'll say this much. I love politics. For me, politics is like watching sport.
Oh,
So I watch. It's like watching what's happening, commentating on it. I love that whole rush. I love that it's moving parts all the time. Do I want to get into electoral politics and tell people to vote for me? Probably not anymore. Yeah.
why do you say that though?
Because I
Because I
think
think you do have quite a big following at the moment, and I'm sure if you do get into politics, people would definitely vote for you.
perhaps, but I my goal is I want institutions that last and not people, and I want that's what I'm saying, the system change thing. So yes, if there's an argument that by me getting in I can help with that system change and then move, then yes, that makes sense. But I still think that being this sideliner and annoying people makes a lot more of a difference than me actually getting in. Because the other thing is, you get into politics, suddenly you can't attack your own party, right?
Yeah,
I may not agree with what my party is doing. I don't think I agree with any of the parties right now,
yeah.
right? So I don't like to be censored. I don't like to not be able to say what I want to say. I don't want to play a game just to get ahead just to get ahead in politics, which a lot of these young politicians they get in. Then they're stuck in this little place where they can't say what they want to say about the party. They have to depend on the party to give them nominations. I don't like being dependent on anything or anyone, and I don't think I'll put myself in that position.
Right, because power and money changes people, right?
Yes,
So
and I want to see changes to that, because one very important thing, like you
yeah.
said, you talk about money, is even in journalism, if you follow the money, you'll see like where the reality is with the where the money is.
Mm-mm.
So unless there are caps on campaign spendings where everybody has a certain limit that they can spend on an election campaign, it's already skewed in disfavor of people with less money. So that's why people like the Rajapaksas do well, because they have amassed their wealth and they can
Mm.
spend on advertising and they
Yeah.
can have huge budgets, and nobody knows anything about the money that comes in and goes out. But you
Right.
have to have a cap. This is something I've been saying for a while. There has to be a cap on campaign spending. So if you run for office and I run, and I can be Mahinda Rajapaksa and you can be Evan, but we still have the same amount based on locality and whatever. We have a
Yeah.
limited amount, and that's fair. That's being fair. So there are lots of things like this that need to be discussed within the political circles, and I can't say that even with my interest that I know all the details, right? Like there's a lot to get into, like bylaws that affect local government, and so many little niggling details that
Mm-mm.
I feel like I need a good 6 months and some freedom to like really study
Yeah.
this. But there's a
Sure.
lot of change that can be made, and there are people in places
Yeah.
already who can make those changes.
Changes, but are they being given the freedom to do it?
So this is where I think this youth thing came up, because there are young lawyers, there are young civil society actors, there are people in these key places who want to change and would like to make a change. And I still see this youth sort of, I wouldn't call it a party, maybe even a party. It could be a youth platform, something. I still see a lot of potential for that if it comes to that point. The only thing I see that will be very detrimental is, unfortunately, I mean, not unfortunately, but you have to engage the masses, and a youth group that is primarily Colombo and Colombo led, because a lot of these young people that we're looking at
Yeah.
are from Colombo, educated here, understand the system here, very well known here, but they have to appeal to the masses to get their votes in the
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they can move forward with a youth movement or youth party, unless, so they, even if you create a youth party right now, you're going to have to spend like the next 10 years pumping money into making that party known, going around talking to people,
Campaigns.
campaigning. So
Yeah.
there is an argument for it, and it has to start at some point. But then we go back to, let's say we start, me and other people my age, roughly in our mid 30s, let's say it's going to take us another 20 years to make that impact, and then we're back to being the old.
We can't afford that time,
Exactly,
huh?
exactly. We can't afford that time, and we'll be old politicians that nobody wants. So it's better for you, I think, the younger guys from right now to know. And if we can direct with our information, because that's what we've spent years studying this.
Yeah.
If we can direct with our information and the younger people can actually step up, there's a lot to be done in terms of voter education, for instance. That's something I'm very passionate about. Actually, I'm just passionate about, I think education and using media for education is the biggest way to make the change.
And I gotta tell you, you have been doing that,
Oh,
Royal.
thank you.
You have been doing it in the most amazing way. And I know I'm putting you on the spot because I want to get the authentic answers, and,
Yeah.
and we want to get to know who Royal Raymond really is and what she really thinks about the current economic crisis. Now, talking about the Rajapaksa money, right? The international media coverage on the current Sri Lankan economic crisis has been a bit scandalous, at least from from what I've seen, right? Do you think the Rajapaksas are probably bribing the media companies to bring out a different narrative than actually what is happening in the country?
Good question, simply because it's not something they haven't done before, right? So
Oh,
it has been done. PR companies have been hired, very good PR companies for damage control and stuff like this. Is stuff that's quite well known. However, in this case, I feel that the Rajapaksas never expected this kind of mass mobility against them, and they couldn't pull their usual arsenal together, right? Like, so they usually try to splinter conversations, fragment conversations. They tried all of that, because I think even before anything happened, the Temple Trees occasion, I don't
mm-mm.
know if you saw this, where this anonymous hack,
All
there was an
right.
anonymous hack that said that Namal and I are business partners.
Oh yeah, I was actually about to ask you that
Yeah.
question.
So there was a lot around raw media and also me. So the whole point with that is, people close to us obviously knew the truth, but people outside, it's very easy for someone who doesn't know. Like, if I was a person who didn't know raw media, didn't know Royal, and I heard this story, I would be like, yeah, maybe.
To the outside people, how are you going to prove that truth?
I haven't focused on it. We put out our statement. I have allowed people, there are people, thankfully, who are very kind and fighting on my behalf. Like, even till yesterday, some troll account was doing this whole thing about what a bootlicker I was and whatever. Because if I say something about Sajid Premadasa, suddenly that means to people that equates being a Rajapaksa fan. They don't seem to
Oh,
understand that, and I don't have the time sometimes to explain this. That just because I'm calling one person out doesn't mean that I'm a fan of the other person. It just means that I'm calling out qualities that
yes.
shouldn't be in politics. So so the splintering conversation is kind of one of the tactics that they use. So they did that early in this to try and discredit me and the people who are reporting from the Araga layer. But they didn't. It backfired. Everything backfired, including the social media ban, and they were trending, as we all
Yes,
know,
yes,
all
very
over the
much.
world, right? So at this point, I don't think they're doing that, but I think at this point, what's working against what's happening is simply international media itself has issues. Media itself has issues globally. So international media is misreporting, misrepresenting, not spending enough money. They're not sending in enough journalists. Like they're parachuting journalists here who don't have nuances, don't understand the context. They don't talk to the local journalists a lot of the times. They're taking the wrong pictures. So it's actually just bad journalism, is my
Absolutely.
opinion right now. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Roel, for that incredible answer. We do have more issues to address, but in the meantime, we are moving on to a break. You are watching Relax Radio Beyond Frequencies. We will be right back. Welcome back to the show. You are watching Relax Radio Beyond Frequencies. My name is Evan Hayes, and this is the Mic Drop, a revolution of a generation where we are interviewing the youth activists, advocates, influencers, you name it, giving out their story, their opinions, and of course their ideas, and basically the current economic crisis through their eyes. And for today's episode, we have the incredible Royal Raymond, giving us the most authentic answers as she possibly can. Royal, once again, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being a part of Relax Radio.
you very much for having me and giving me the space to crystallize my thoughts.
Absolutely. Talking about crystallizing your thoughts now, I wanted to touch a bit more on the allegations made about, having associations with Nama Rajapaksa. And you said, people outside, they don't know the truth. And, what better way to spill out the truth on relaxed radio? So why don't you go ahead and, address that whole situation?
Yeah, so immediately as it happened, so the night before, people were sending me like these screenshots and whatever, and I kind of laughed at it because I had now come to the point where I was like, if they're talking about you, then you're making an impact, so just don't take any notice of it. But by the next morning, it had really blown up. I had like over 20 WhatsApp messages from various people, and what bothered me was that even people I knew very closely were asking me, "Is this true?" So
Right.
that made me think, okay, there's a gap of knowledge here. So the first thing I did, and even then, it was like 11 in the morning when I finally addressed it because I was like, I don't want to deal with this, right?
Right.
We were in the middle of like this whole movement and like go home and all of that. And the last thing you need is to deal with some drama that's going to derail you. I
Yeah.
didn't want to deal with it. And then finally, I just like got out of bed and I tweeted a bunch of tweets saying like, look, this is completely inauthentic and a false attempt to discredit me. Then I also told my boss that they also should do something. So they were working on their communication. But for about a good week, I kept tabs on it, and it was very revealing to me the way misinformation and disinformation works. Because I have worked in the last couple of years a lot with misinformation and disinformation. So whether
Yeah.
that's training people on what this means, whether it's hosting webinars or whatever, I have done a lot of that. But it has never before this been something that happened to me. So when I went through that, and I'm not talking about this in a very emotional way, in the sense that this has nothing to do with me. I'm removing myself from that, but I'm looking at it from a person going through it.
All right.
There were a few things that I realized, and one was I understand why people have trouble telling the difference between misinformation and disinformation. Coming from a point of view of a person educating, you think it's quite easy. You give people this little thing that's like check your source, check the date. You give them like a 10 pointer on how to find out if it's
Yeah.
yeah. But it really for the person from the other side, it's not so easy, right? Like for instance, trust is a big factor in countering disinformation and misinformation. What happens when trusted media organizations' credibility is attacked,
Yeah.
which is what happened to us.
Yes.
So then people very fairly have questions, and you can't blame them for that. So we had to take that hit, I think, and we have to we had to rely on just the fact that our good graces, what we've been doing for so long, will speak for itself, and that in time it will also speak for itself. But we also had to acknowledge that I don't think you'll meet any public person who doesn't have some story that goes on around about them. So it's going to happen, right? I've just learned to acknowledge it. Like some people are just going to constantly bring this up, and
Mm-mm.
I'm just going to have to deal with it. That's one thing. And the other thing that really, really like occurred to me, what I observed during all of this was we have a few fact checkers in Sri Lanka. We have fact checking organizations, but I can't say that even the fact checking organizations are equipped well enough or have the funding to do their jobs as well as they should, because that's something I realized when this happened. I did reach out to a few of these fact checking organizations, said we're happy to give you our business details, we're happy to like give you everything you need
Okay.
to do to for you all to check it out for yourselves and do your own assessment, but none of them were in a place to do an independent assessment. So for me, that is a weak point in the media ecosystem, because if fact checkers don't have the kind of money to do independent fact checking, one fact checking organization listed the people who had been accused and then listed all of their what do you call it, the statements that the company made. But that's not fact checking. That helps because you're
Yes.
putting the two answers together, but any company can lie, so like fact checking takes things a little deeper than that. And I wish there was more, not just that I wish it, just as much as the political system is so corrupt and backwards, the media ecosystem, I'm not saying it's corrupt, but I'm saying the media ecosystem needs so much reform, like so much reform. And that's something that I have been trying in some
Trying.
ways
Yes.
uh, to
Well, Royal,
address.
I think we have a question coming from one of the viewers. The question says, Royal, I love how straightforward you are with your answers. I have a question. Now, everyone is talking about a system change, which is crucial in not just politics in Sri Lanka, but many other areas. What is your opinion on this? How should we initiate a change for the better? The question comes from Ramona Judith.
Thanks for the question. And it's a question I'd really love to answer because it's something I believe strongly in. I do believe in a system change. The beauty of this is myself and many other people have believed in system change for a long time. It's just that we didn't have the backing or the people echoing the same thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right now we have this
absolutely.
beautiful moment in which everyone wants a system change. So what is a system change is, see, the thing is, this is so simple, right? Like, this is what I tell people, and sometimes they roll their eyes at me. But this problem, the resolution and the solutions are so simple. If people do what they're supposed to do, if you just do the right thing, it's very simple to sort out
Which
all
has
of these
not been
things.
happening in this
It
country.
just doesn't happen because people want to chase their own personal interests, personal agendas, money. So I feel like on many levels, so if we're talking system change in change in politics and system change even in media, there are reforms that need to come in. So that's the easiest way to deal with it, because you bring in reforms that make it cleaner, right? But there's also a system change that has to happen on a cultural level, and that's
Oh,
where it
yeah,
starts, right?
absolutely.
Because it's what you bring and what you allow that reflects in politics. Far amplified, it'll be a much amplified horrible monster of a version of what you're doing. But your decision to vote for the wrong person, your decision to not be so principled about something, your decision to be like, oh, I'm being very mean here, but I'm going to say it. Your decision to say, oh, but Ranil is okay, like he'll come in, he'll come in, and we need him right now. I get it, right? I get it. I'm facing the same economic issues that the rest of the country is, and I feel for people. But you're bringing in another very corrupt, manipulative. I'm just going to
So you
stop.
don't agree with the something is better than nothing
No, I
agenda?
don't. I don't. But I do. I will also say that compromise is necessary. It's not something it's not something I like to admit to, but maturity has taught me that
Otherwise,
compromise, yeah, compromise
yes.
is necessary. But what are we compromising on? That's the other question. So Ranil comes in. Ranil could very, very, very easily have said, "Don't give me premiership. I'll come in. I'll help us sort this out. But I want Kota to step down, and I want us to fix this system." He didn't. He came in and said, "Give me PM. I will do this, and I will do that, and I will save this, and I will fix this." So he played right into that old system, which is where he comes from. He could have made a change if he cared. He doesn't. I don't know why he doesn't care, but he doesn't care. And that is my problem here. Even Ranil, being whoever he is, can come in and make that change,
Right.
but he didn't. And it's not really and when people say, but there's nobody else, yeah, okay, maybe Ranil is the person who's probably most capable at this
Capable,
moment.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, okay,
Mm-mm.
Ranil, step in, then, but do the right thing. Yeah, I don't see him saying anything about abolishing the executive presidency. I don't see him. None of the reforms are being talked about. All he's doing is basically all he's doing is allowing Gota to do what he wants to do, and then helping with the economic side.
Well, on that note, so you say, obviously, people are not, some are not absolutely not happy with, Ranil's position at the moment, because a Ranil Go government is already in
Yeah,
place. But, one of the thing, some of the things that I've been seeing on social media is that, probably Ranil, right? Even though they do put out a public display of, what, I never really liked Gotabaya Rajapaksa and the whole Rajapaksa regime. Do you think behind the scenes, they are like pals, they're like, fist
of course,
buddies?
yeah, without a doubt, because Ranjan said it, right? He said, "Megalokumala Yalu Malli," they're all friends. And there's plenty of pictorial evidence of them being together and whatever. And I think when you're in an industry, because even politics is an industry, if you look at it that way. So when you're in an industry, I meet you guys 2 years down the line, I might meet you all in another media event. We know each
Yeah,
other. We might have a friendship. We work together on some level. Maybe I don't agree with everything you're saying. You don't agree with everything I'm saying, but we're okay with each other. We may have a meal together. The media might take a picture of that and say, "Oh, I'm working with your agenda." Like, so there are spiraling stories from it. But yeah, behind the scenes, I see it's very difficult to find people who have actual integrity in politics. But at the same time, there are people who do, but that integrity is also to their detriment. For instance, the JVP, right? They can have a lot of integrity in some of the things that they do, but by being not being able to compromise and also being somewhat illiberal, or that is the older version of the JVP. They're not very liberal, right?
yeah,
If they change that, I feel that they have a chance, because I wouldn't want to have a government that's like not liberal. I
yeah.
do like my like to be free and have
Free,
my
yes.
yeah. So I think even the JVP has to grow a little bit, but I admire them for having integrity.
I mean, even though we're democratic for the name, we don't run on democratic
No, we
policies.
do not. We do not. We
That's the
should.
problem.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
should. But again, that comes back to, like I said, there's so much to be done in terms of media education, and that's what makes me excited about so many young people being on social media, the platforms through which we can reach them. TikTok is huge. Like I'm trying to crack into TikTok. I've been trying for a while. It
Yeah.
takes a lot of effort.
Effort. Yeah.
People think these 3-minute videos are quick. It takes about an hour
It
to
takes a
shoot.
lot of effort
Yeah,
to make one.
yeah.
Well, I hope Ramona, I hope Royal, fantastically answered that question for you. And just like that, you can send in all of your questions. And of course, you can even call us up on our number 0785 And also do follow us on our social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and do hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page so you don't, miss out on live programs and special programs just like this one. And if you want to have a smooth listening experience, all you have to do is head on over to your Apple App Stores, your Google Play Stores, hit that download button, and have the Relax Radio app running in your backgrounds. Now, I want to go back to the whole Ranil topic, Royal. So, he's been setting up international aid consortiums, right? So, setting up international aid consortiums, once again, do you think it's pulling up more loans in one sense? But, that is a problem. That's one of the reasons why we are in this position. So, what do you think you should do as opposed to setting up aid consortiums and pulling up more loans, making the situation probably worse?
So I'm going to say at the outset that I'm going to give the disclaimer that I'm not an economist, right? So there are things that I don't there
Okay.
are things I don't understand
Yeah, totally.
about economics, and I want to say that here in case I tread on anyone's toes, who'll be like, "What is she talking about?" But my gut understanding here is that we are in a really bad situation, and we are relying on aid, which is like what happens to countries that like, I mean, if we were going through the tsunami, I can understand, right? Like, this is policy decisions made by leaders, in selfish leaders, that brought us to this point. So we are now at a stage at which, A, we're depending on aid. B, we're going to be depending on more loans. And C, this we're not going to get out of this situation in a while, right? It's going to
Yeah.
take at least, by conservative estimates, another year or two, right? So my thing is, yes, you're doing all of these things, but where are the economic reforms? Because that's where it has to start, right?
Yeah.
You're not. I haven't heard Ranil talk about economic reforms. I also haven't seen him really work. I don't know if people are like Ranil knows the economy, but I really think what it is that Ranil has connections. He knows people in the
Mm.
foreign company, in foreign countries, and whatever. He has the connections, but is he capable of doing economic reforms? And the people who are capable, like the Harshas and the Irans, don't want to work under Gotabaya Rajapaksa government, which is a fair point to make. They're holding to that last fort of, they're standing by their guns and saying, we don't want to work under corrupt president that the people want to. People don't want anymore. People are asking him to leave. So if Ranil really cares about the country, all Ranil has to say is, Mr. President,
Step down.
I will fix this. Step down. Let these two guys come in. Bring in the economic reform. So it's a lot of faff. It's just like a lot of bullshit, basically, that's going on.
Well, do you think Sri Lanka can afford to, not have a standing president at the moment? And if he, does step down, then Ranil Wickremesinghe would be president. That you did kind of have, negative opinions on him.
I do have
So,
negative. It's
if,
like this, right?
yeah,
Again, it's a tricky, very tricky place. And again, to go back to the, I'm not an economist. I can also say I'm not a constitutional expert. There are
right,
people like
okay,
that, but having spoken to them, because I am in touch with them, there are constitutional provisions for the president to step down, and like you said, the PM to take over. But at the same time, if you bring in the 21A and 21st Amendment, what happens is that the president loses a lot of his executive powers, and you abolish the executive presidency. So actually, it becomes the PM who's more powerful, or PM and Parliament.
yeah,
So in that case, if Ranil moves up to president, that's okay. It's a ceremonial role, right? Initially we were saying, okay, let Sajid have that ceremonial role. This is now I have to say I'm not. This is just conversations, right? We're not predicting anything. So there was a conversation that maybe Sajid should have that ceremonial role, and that you should have like somebody like Iran or Harsha as a PM, because they're very steady. And maybe Iran as a PM and Harsha as a foreign minister. I
okay,
think that would work. I think Shanakian from the TNA is really somebody that I have begun to admire quite a bit, but I'll keep my admiration at a minimum, because with all politicians, nobody gets a blank check, right? So, but I'm quite impressed by him. And he's young. That's
yes,
another big thing. You need to have young people. Gigi, I think it's Ponambalam, another young guy.
mm-hmm.
He should be getting in. So just clean up just clean up the system. Like, why are these old people, these Vasudevas and the Harins and everybody who's has no morality whatsoever being put in here, when the people who Sumantiran clean people on the side,
Yeah.
or clean that we know of, all of them, okay, bring them in and change the system so that the cleanliness comes in. Because, for
Yeah.
instance, mm, uh, members of parliament are not paid very well, right? They should be getting CEO level salaries, because it's a big job that they're doing. If they get paid decent salaries, this I'm not saying that they will stop doing wheeler dealing and that they will stop doing their commissions and whatever, but at least they have no more excuse. You're getting paid a very good salary, then stop with the other stuff. And then you can
Right.
implement these reforms that they stop taking money from other things. So I would say that everybody in the political system probably has struck deals, because that's the system. I'm not going to hold it against all of them, but I'm saying if you want to have clean politicians, that also has to change.
That has to change. Very true. And Sri Lanka's constitution is such that if the prime minister resigns, the entire cabinet dissolves.
Yeah.
And that's something to think about, because the state of affairs in a country or within a nation, it has to run its course, right? You
Yeah.
need ministers for
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
affairs, but the prime minister goes and everything's like
Yeah.
going into chaos. Like,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think that's why everything was in such a state of flux, right? We had the prime minister resign, and the president. Then at that point, it became necessary that the president holds fort. Then when Ranil came in, there was Ranil. I personally feel instead of Ranil, somebody else maybe should have come in. But okay, he appointed Ranil. When Ranil came in, then the next step, listening to what the people want, should have been for Gota to step down. So we have the parliament, we have the PM and the cabinet and whatever in place, and then just like I said, use the clean people, bring in the clean people and do the reforms. But honestly, look, I slammed Sajid for a long time. If you've been following my any of my
Yes,
tweets, I was going
I'm
after
aware. I'm aware.
Sajid, but it wasn't personal. In that, like, again, people take this very personally, or some of the fans around him. But I was calling out areas that I felt would be detrimental, right? Like, for instance, the fact that they are a bit tone deaf, the SJB. The SJB doesn't respond to media. They can sometimes be very rude to media. These are things that I felt that would translate to very unhealthy cultures going forward.
Yeah.
And that's what I was attacking them on. And I will continue to attack them, because I'm saying, if you want our vote, if you want us to believe in you, then show us that you are not the same thing that these guys are. And I have to say, there are parts of it that are like that, because they're used to the old culture, but also the SJB is also, recently at least, even in the recent past, I have to say I have some respect for Sajid for sticking to his guns, for having integrity. And in that case, if Sajid had come in as PM, um,
Do you
instead
think
of
this?
Ranil.
Do you think he would actually make his promises work? Because that's what all of these people, they promised, I'll do this, I'll do
True.
that, but it never happens, right?
So almost all of our presidents since the executive was brought in promised to abolish it and didn't, right? So that's
See,
so Sajid
yeah,
did say that he would, and I have every hope that he would. But everything's untested, right? Till it happens.
yeah.
Ranil at least is 100% he's not going to do it. He has never said he's going to do it. He doesn't even talk about it. But I do think we should have given Sajid that chance to prove that he could have done it, would have done it, and that would have made such a difference. But it's not enough, because remember, in 2015 we voted in a Yahapalne government, new people. Maithripala was new. We were hoping for change,
Yeah.
but he couldn't keep up with it, right? He couldn't keep. So would Sajid have been able to keep up with everything? But on the other hand, I feel he had a strong team. He has Iran, and I have a lot of respect for both Iran and Harsha. I think they're very strong as a team. So as much as I slammed the SJB, I would have preferred the SJB in than
But
Ranil,
I
to be
don't think we
sure.
would ever know what they would do, because I don't think he's coming into
We don't.
power.
Yeah, we won't. Exactly.
That's the problem. But I also wanted to touch on the marginalized communities and the minorities. So, you've been advocating for the Tamils as well, the whole Tamil genocide. But Royal, have you been doing it for the past couple of years, or
No,
did
I
you only
have
start
not.
doing it just because of the current economic crisis? Because the Tamils have been asking for peace and justice for a long time. But now the Sinhalese and basically everyone, now they are facing, now the current economic crisis is a nation's problem,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they have been facing it for a really long time. Why did you say you didn't,
I
but why
didn't.
did you not?
Okay, so moment of truth. Okay, so I'm half Tamil myself. So I'm going
All
to say
right.
that right from the start. I'm half Tamil, but I didn't grow up in Jaffna. For about 3 generations, my family has not been from the north. But I come from a family of public, very, how do I put this, very civic minded people. And I have an uncle who was a journalist who was murdered by the Premadasa regime. Richard D'Souza. My other uncle, Dr. Pakiswadi Saranamuthu, is a very strong champion for human rights and for the Tamil people. As a young person growing up in this scenario, watching what happened to one uncle and what I was seeing another uncle having to go through, which is now what I'm heading into, where I'm getting attacked a lot and
Let's
all of
hope
these
not,
stories and all
huh?
of that.
Yeah.
I made very I wanted to, but I made so up until 2013, I told you when I deleted my accounts, I was very vocal about the Tamils. Then I shut up after 2013, and after 2013, I had very personal reasons. I have a young son who's no longer very young. He's now 18, but at that time he was quite young. I was a single parent. It was not something I wanted to put on the line, and I made an informed, selfish decision to take care of myself and my son first. Also, I knew the environment was not right to speak up against the government. My former editor, Frederica Jens, who was the editor of the Sunday Leader after La Santa,
Right.
she mentioned something that really stuck in my head, which I've said at subsequent interviews also. She said the Rajapaksas waged a very successful war against the Tamils and the LTTE. And the second very successful war that they waged was against the media.
Right.
So I came into being in a culture where everybody was already self-censoring. Nobody was really saying anything, because if you said something, the likelihood is you'd have to seek asylum, leave the country. Up until 2009, we had a lot of the white van culture. After 2009, we didn't. But what happened was everybody just shut up,
Yeah,
because they had
that's
just
true.
learned. They had learned how it would work. So if you were going to stay in the country, it was better for you not to say anything really against the Rajpaksas. And I don't know of any other journalist that spoke up. It was, if anything, it was activists and civil society that continued to stand up for the Tamils, and even they had a lot of pushbacks. They had, their financial records being checked. As far as I know, people questioning them, CID. That was just not a path I wanted to take at that point. But I feel that I have now come into my own even better. I also feel that I'm ready for it. My son is older. I feel that even if the CID were to come knocking on the door, I have a plan for that. Okay.
Really? Oh,
I
wow.
have had plans from like a while ago now. I'm not afraid anymore. Let's put it that way. And it has nothing to, it has little to do with, no, that's not entirely true. I have to say that the country gave me the hope I needed to stand up and say what I wanted to say. And I hope that we give the country the hope they need to stand up and continue to say what they have to say, because it's that united voice that's difficult to clamp down on. But one person telling the truth will get killed. It's just the truth.
It's
That's
just the
the truth.
truth.
Yeah.
So, moving on, do you like only fear for your son's life? So you said you're not fearful of what's going to happen to you.
No, I'm not.
What about your son?
He's a big boy,
Don't you have that, feeling of what I'm doing, as a job has an effect on him as well?
I do. He's at an age where I think he can analyze and comprehend for himself that principles matter and that it's important to stand up for what is right. And even if now we're speaking in hypothetical situations, I really don't think I would die, to be honest. I think that culture of dying is over, right? Before 2009, it was a very different scene. We were in the middle of the war, when
Absolutely.
white vans and all could happen, because there was a state of like disarray in the country. We've been in peace times, right? Like
We
peace
have.
times for the last over a decade. So I really don't see myself being abducted or any of that happening. But I know that what happens and what will happen to journalists is what has happened globally and everywhere else, is where you get slammed with court cases, like what happened to Hizbullah. You get put behind bars for a year or two. So be it. Like if it's meant to be, it's
Meant to be.
I can't say anything about it. So.
Well, Royal, could you give us a quick brief on what happened on the 9th of May when you went missing? I'm going to quote missing.
Yeah. So May 9th, I went into office. So I had been at the Aragalaya for quite a bit, for a month by then. And I finally went back into office, and I was so happy to be back in my normal clothes. I'd put my makeup on. I was quite happy to be a little normal.
Right.
I was in my heels, and then all kinds of drama started unfolding on live television. And I was watching this, and I was taking video, and I was sharing it on my Twitter. And journalists suffer from this thing, this FOMO, fear of missing out. You have to be there, like you have to. So this started happening, and me and my deputy, we were like, shall we go? And we immediately, thankfully, I had my gym clothes with me, changed, and we ran. So we got there, and by the time the first attack had happened, tear gas and all of that. So I was there from around 11:30 in the morning, and I was up and down, walking up and down. I was in the middle of the thick of things. There was a point at which the protesters, I think another set of anti-government protesters came and were trying to join everybody at
Right.
Kota Gogama,
Yes.
and the army had like 3 rows of people that they had put to stop them for whatever reason from coming there. And one of the army guys was like right behind me with his gun, and I remember moving the moving the barrel of the gun away in case like it, like fired in
Yeah.
my direction. But
Yeah.
because we were all against each other, and at no point did I feel at that point fear, because I had been for a month with this movement, and I knew the people's voice was so strong that there was no chance that the government or the or the military would turn on anyone, and they didn't at that point. Then by around 4 o'clock, 4:30, I heard. So okay, I was covering the protests and the tear gas and all of that. And as you know, there's no internet connection
Yeah.
around that area, right?
Mm-mm.
So by the time I moved towards Golf Face Hotel itself, and all my messages started coming, I saw that something entirely different had been unfolding elsewhere. And there were people being stripped naked, and that the buses had been pushed into the bay or whatever. And like I'd heard all of these things, I was like, for me, it was very surprising, because now what's happening here is very different, and I
Yes.
can see something's unfolding, something else is unfolding elsewhere in the country. Actually, I didn't even know about the country at that point. I just knew near the Beira Lake,
The situation.
some drama
Yeah.
was going on there.
Right.
And then I started walking in that direction. I was actually going to go to Temple Trees, in the front, Maina Gogama. And when I was walking there, two different people told me, behind Temple Tree, something's happening. Go and see what's happening there. They're murdering people or whatever. And I remember before going, I called another media organization, because a lot of the media, we're quite close to each other. And I said, I heard something like this is going on. I'm still quite a walk away. If you have people there, just see what's happening. And so it was not like I had not informed anyone also. Like, in the sense, I'm rechecking, because I've heard so many people tell me, oh, you shouldn't have gone. So I was doing a mental check. Did I do what
The
was
right
right?
thing.
Yeah, and I did.
Yeah.
I informed people where I was going. I told my partner that I was going there. So I was walking in that direction. And when you turn into Rotunda Gardens, which is leading to the back of Temple Trees, that's where I started going live. So I was walking there, and I was doing this whole conversation about something else, and I was saying something like, I heard that there is some kind of bloodshed going on here, or there's some drama, and I'm walking in this direction and whatever. But I didn't think, I never expected like what happened there to happen, because up until then it was very clear that the media was on the side of the people.
Yeah.
So I had felt so safe right through. And so I came down that lane, and as I took the bend, I was surrounded by people.
Right. Oh
So
wow.
they were like, who are you? And I'm wearing the press jacket. But who are you? Which media? We want to see your ID. And they were very aggressive. And to the point where I'm a bit stubborn also. So I'm like, you can't just come, you can't bully me. You can't be like, give me your ID. Who are you to question me? I have no idea who these people are. They want to see my ID. They want me to they wanted my phone. So by the time I'd actually put my phone down, so it's not like I was recording anymore, but they were still very aggressive. And I didn't realize that people who were watching the live saw the first part of this, where I was being questioned, and then the
Yes.
phone went down. So at that point, it was so heated,
You
and
feared for your life.
I didn't expect that kind of pushback or that kind of aggression from people that I was very much on the side of. That and they were not willing to listen. They had poles in their hands and all of that. They were not very willing to listen to
Yeah.
anything I said. And behind me is a makeshift barrier and Air Force officers. And I just jumped, because there was like no choice. Up until then, for me, the Air Force and Army was like, I didn't want to have anything to do with them. But the situation was such that if I didn't cross that barrier, I would have probably been beaten up
Oh
there.
wow.
Right. So I crossed the barrier, and I was still not sure what was going on, really. So I was standing right on that fence, and these guys were still like just over the fence near my face and yelling at me. And then one of the army guys came and said, Miss Atultiana, and he kind of tried to put me in this little room. But it's not inside Temple Trees, it's just outside Temple Trees. So like the security quarters, I
Yes.
suppose. So he put me in there because these guys were now looking at me, and I had become the focus of their anger. How that happened, I don't know, because I'm on your side, right? So strange turn of events to have like the people that you're against actually like protecting you in this situation,
Exactly.
and the people that I have been fighting for are with poles trying to attack me. And so I was in there, and I was watching they were carrying these bodies in. So at least 4 people were brought in. I couldn't. I actually have a small video of one guy who was walking in, and the army guys took his shirt off and tied it around his waist because he was stripped naked, right?
Oh,
I
wow.
have that video, but like there were guys. At least he was walking and he was led into temple trees. But I have videos of them holding guys like dogs, like by the hands and the legs, and I couldn't tell if they were alive or not, completely naked. And I'm thinking, what have I got myself into? Like, what am I doing here? I was very, I it was just a strange. I just didn't know what to do, because I couldn't come out. If I had come out, I'd already been branded enemy by circumstance,
Yes,
just by
yes, very
taking
much.
that turn. And the crime was that I had a camera. So it's again a issue of, I'm not sure if ethics is the right word, but my job as a journalist is not to, when I say be biased towards the truth, if the anti government people are also doing something wrong, that doesn't mean that I stand with them at that point. Violence is violence,
Violence is
and
violence.
my camera should not have been covered because they were perpetrating violence, but they were annoyed because I had my camera on, and that meant their faces would be seen and there would be consequences for them. I understand where they're coming from. As a human being, I fully understand the rage and the violence, fully empathize. But there's a reason why there's a legal framework. Because if we go with, oh, I understand, I empathize, and everybody can go and murder anyone else they want to, right? Like
Yes.
you could really annoy me and I could stab you. But there's a reason why there are these laws. So my job as a journalist was not to. It's so strange how things switch and turn, right? Like these I have to be very clear. These are not the guys who had Gota Gogama, because if it was any of them, they all knew me. I'd
New,
been there right
yes,
from the start.
totally.
So when I asked the army guys, they were like gummy ministers. So people in that area had got really riled up, and I fully understand. It's just one of those situations, right? It's like wrong place, wrong time.
Wrong place,
The
wrong
same thing
time.
happened to Sajid
Mhm.
in Iran. They thought they were coming into, they were helping, and then they were chased off, right? They didn't see that happening. And I guess people who, I mean, I also said they shouldn't have come into that volatile situation, but I guess people say that about me also. Should have known better than to go there. Maybe they have an argument. Maybe next time I learn to not, but I don't see that happening. I'm not the type to not go just because it's
It's
dangerous.
dangerous. And
Yeah,
I think you are doing a fantastic job as a journalist. And, bottom line is, what Royal says is journalists should be given the freedom to do their job, because
100%.
at the end of the day, I mean, that's probably your mean of income, right? That's
Yeah,
what you do as a
yeah,
job.
yeah.
So on that note, of course, Royal, we are coming towards the end of the program, sadly. But before we leave, is there hope for Sri Lanka? Is there, what is the solution?
I'm pro hope all the time. No, that's not true. I'm pro hope, but there are times that I lose hope as well.
Generally
Yeah,
optimistic person.
generally, no, actually, the truth is, I can be very pessimistic. Okay,
Okay.
but I'm pro hope in that I truly do believe that even if we have very low moments, that we need to seek out the things that can keep us going, and that's just life in general, right? You could choose to focus on the things that are really bad, or you could choose to focus on the things that are good. We have a resilient people. We have something beautiful going on right now. I have never in my life seen people come together, want this kind of change. It's a moment that should be used, mobilized. Um, I have faith that different actors like myself, different people in this scene will do what they can to influence even 5 or 10 people around you and change that atmosphere. Because I feel like changing atmospheres is very important. So it's what you bring that you bring
Absolutely.
to other people. So even you guys having this is changing. It might be 100 people that listen to you, but a
Yeah.
100 people come off thinking there's a perspective I didn't think about. And I could speak to a friend and I could be very low, but that friend, is basically what happened to me this morning, could tell me, no, you stick to your vision and your dream. And then I take that same vision and the dream of a more equitable society, of more, just reforms. And I continue. The more I believe in it, see, it's very simple. You speak life or death.
Yeah.
Okay, so you either speak things that are negative and will be bad for the country, or you start speaking good things that are going to happen. So I'm not saying it in a hippie. Not that I'm against hippies, but I'm not saying it in this
Yeah.
hippie. Choose the positive vibes scene. I'm saying be very aware of what's going on, but choose to speak life into the situation, which is like speak the good stuff, speak change, speak not giving up, hope, resilience. Because if you also start being like, yeah, Machang, it's not going to work, then people will listen to you. They'll be like, yeah, you're right, it's not going to
But we
work.
also can't blame people for being
We
pessimistic.
cannot. We cannot blame people, but anyone with any influence, and I believe everybody has influence. everybody, even if it's two people in your family, change their minds.
Change
Get
their
in there.
minds.
It's like a psyops thing. Get in there and tell them that they can make this change.
Well, Royal, I think you have influenced people in the right way and the best way and in the truthful way. So, from all of us at Relax Radio and from the Sri Lankan community, me as a Sri Lankan, thank you so much for what you're doing. It's an amazing thing to see. It actually inspires me, everyone out there. It's a change that you are making that you are probably not aware, but you are doing it. And thank you so much for joining us in making that change, because we here at Relax Radio, we want to, build a community that is diverse and that is promoting equality and bringing peace and justice to the communities of Sri Lanka. So
100%.
thank you so much for
I'm with you
joining
guys, and I'm
us.
so glad we connected. Obviously, intentions align, and I'm glad I came here and I had the chance to speak. And I really hope that some of what I say resonates with people.
It absolutely will. And this should not be the last that we see of you at Relax Radio. We want to come in and of course give us more information and be a part continuously. But thank you for everyone who watched and you hopped on board and for sending in your questions as well. We appreciate it so much. And this is, of course, once again, the mic drop, a revolution of a generation on Relax Radio. With that said, we are concluding today's program. Have yourselves a fantastic Sunday ahead.